Hello, I'm Jenya DeLima. Welcome to Writing and Editing, the author-focused podcast that takes a whole-person approach to everything related to both writing and editing. It doesn't seem to matter how far we come as creatives when we think about imposter syndrome, since it still hits most of us, at least from time to time. Whether you're just starting out or you've released one bestseller after another, those feelings still pop up and threaten to dim our spark. The title of Eli Rallo's newest book, Does Anyone Else Feel This Way?, perfectly captures these feelings and fears and reflects the theme of today's discussion. Well, I'm so thrilled to have you here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So, you've said in other interviews that you dreamed of being a writer since you were really young. So, how have those dreams both differed and been similar to the reality?
That's a good question. I think when you have a really big dream, you might not be thinking explicitly of what it would look like in actuality. And especially with something like books, I feel like it's a little bit different because publishing is such a sort of gate kept undercover industry. It's not as easy to kind of picture what it would be like to be a published author because you don't really know what goes on there. So
Right.
I will say that I wanted to write books, and I think I was picturing the practice more than the product. The idea of like writing on a deadline and having a book deal was kind of what I pictured more so than like actually publishing books. I will say, just like anything, it is a job. And I think that something that I always like make sure to be super grateful for is like hobbies that I have that aren't monetizable, because I think that once you start monetizing something, there are different pressures and goals that like that passion might not have been associated with before. So, before I was published, I think writing was just a release. It was something that I feel like I had to do, something I was always doing, something that I felt so just connected to and with. And it was such a beautiful thing for me. And it still is, but it's obviously very different now that I'm sort of like in this grind and working toward like specific set goals by my publisher and my agents and myself. So I definitely think it's different, but it's not bad.
Right. So, how do you think that hustle culture contributes to people feeling like they do need to monetize something that's a hobby?
I think you have to make a conscious decision. Like, I think you have to decide, like, do I want this to become work or not? Because even though it can be your passion and even though you can love your job, like, it still is work. And I'm not trying to compare that to any other types of jobs at all. Just for me, it takes away a bit of the magic. Like, writing was really a magical thing for me. And now it's a magical thing that's also a job. I have deadlines and due dates, and it doesn't get to be sort of this like languid creative thing. It's sort
Mm.
of more rigid and structured. So I would say like you have to make that decision of like what things in your life are you okay with the magic kind of falling away from it a little bit, because it does become, part of your reality and part of your day to day and part of like your structured life.
So, how do you maintain some of that magic so it's still there, but it's not completely eradicated, even if it's diminished?
I try to really act on impulse with writing. So if I feel called to write about something, I'll do it. If and whether or not that turns into something that like ends up being read or published for work, it's okay either way. So I try to keep the spark alive by just keeping myself creative and like keeping myself like hot within that creativity. So even if I'm on deadline, for example, this book, I'm working on something else in tandem that just like speaks to me or makes me feel creatively inspired.
If you could go back to your younger self, what would you tell her about being a creator and an author, and maybe how she could have prepared herself for that life?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I would just say, like, you don't need to know everything. Like, I think it can be really overwhelming when you reach a point that you've wanted to be at or in for a long time, and you're facing that and it's like real and it's in front of your face. Like, it can feel like, okay, I have all these questions, but I shouldn't ask them because I need to act like I know what I'm doing here. And I would say there's no stupid questions. And that's like silly advice for some, but I think it's just like advice worth remembering, because I think
Mhm.
my first year of doing this, I was really like very much on Google being like, what is normal? Because I am afraid to ask questions. I was also really young. And I think that youth brought this idea that I had to like I had to like execute everything perfectly without asking any questions. And now I'm a little bit more like, okay, I'm going to ask those questions and I'm going to be honest that I don't know what's going on. And also like really lean on and rely on your other authorial friends, your other creator friends. I feel like having people that understand exactly what you're going through
Yeah.
is such an important thing. Like I never realized how much I would need people that like really get it and that are also going through it. I have a friend that I share a pub date with, and it's so nice that we can just chat, even though like she wrote fiction, I wrote nonfiction, different publishers, different process, everything. It's nice that we can just like connect and be like, okay, so we're both freaking out. Cool. Like it's community, and that's really, really helpful.
Yeah, and then how did you find some of these people in your community? Was that easy to do, or did it take, I don't want to say guesswork, but trying out maybe one friendship and then realizing maybe this person isn't in the same place you are or doesn't have the same kind of feelings and can validate what you're going through?
I would say the internet is really helpful for that. Like I think most of my friends that I've made through like writing stuff have been on the internet because most people are like posting about their writing. So, kind of like following along with people online and creating community with them there. And then they introduce you to one person and they introduce you to one person. And then like going to the book talks in your area or the book tours or going to meet authors. Like you just meet like minded readers and writers. I've also taken like classes before, and this was like before I was published, like when I was in college over summer times. I took classes in New York, and I think like that was a great way to meet people and connect with people. So that's kind of what I would recommend. Just like put yourself out there. Online is a great way to do it. Go to places where writers and readers would be.
Yeah, I think that's good advice, especially going online because so many of us in this community are fairly introverted. But even just that first step into the online community is sometimes all we need, or it's that little push. Because, like you said, people will then introduce you to other people, or they'll invite you to an event or
Yeah.
some sort of thing that they're going to be doing soon, or a talk or a signing. And it just becomes this natural wave of motion into other avenues that you might not have even been aware existed before then.
Yeah. I think it's something that I'm so grateful for as somebody who's introverted. Like I connected with some authors on Instagram, and then like one of them who's more extroverted put together like a group chat of like a ton of New York City based authors and like threw me in that group chat. You know what I mean? So it's like things like that where it's like if you're putting yourself out there, somebody will see that. I do believe you have to see the good in everything and you have to believe the best instead of the worst. So I think in believing the best that like making these connections online, sharing their writing, kind of communing with them on the internet could turn into some kind of real valuable friendship and also real valuable community as well.
Hmm. Well, looking back at your book, you also talk about insecurity. And so, if you're comfortable, I'd like to hear what that looked like for you and even where you think some of the insecurity came from.
I don't think anyone is just like born secure and happy. Like, I don't think that those are our baseline emotions. I think we like mistake a lot of times like joy and security and confidence as things like we should all just inherently have. But like, I do believe all of those things unfortunately take work. And I think that insecurity was just like something I like came into the world with, especially like growing up a young woman. I was born at like the tail end of the 90s, so 98. So like kind of coming of age in like the 2000s and 2010s. Like we all know how women were spoken about. We all know like how fat everyone thought Jessica Simpson was and like other just beyond crazy things that were happening in tabloids and in the media. I just think like society like designed itself, especially back then, to raise really insecure anxious young girls that are now insecure women. So I think there was a lot of work to sort of undo that. I don't think the insecurity was born of anything other than just like the society in which we live. And I wouldn't say that I'm like a secure person 24/7. I used to have this idea in my head that like once I was a published author and once people wanted to like work with me, I would cease to feel insecure and I would stop comparing myself. But instead, I think it's just who I'm comparing myself to is what has changed. And
Mhm.
now I'm at this other place of like I'm comparing myself to people that are also authors or like also creators. I don't think it ever really goes away.
Yeah. Are you okay sharing what some of those comparisons are that you're making now?
Yeah, of course. I mean, like I every week watch other authors like get the New York Times list or go on this talk show or go on this podcast. I watch them like get reviewed in this magazine or have this interview. And you start to ask yourself, like, why am I not doing those things, or should I be? I'm pretty good at handling jealousy. Like, I'm not a very jealous person. And when I do feel jealous, I'm really good about like understanding that internally and not projecting onto other people. But I will say that it is still like every day is still a thing of like, you just see this endless stream of people sharing their successes and you wonder like why yours look different or don't look the same. And I don't think there's any like one real good answer to like any of that. But I will say that, you know, seeing other people achieve things, and even in the creation space, like content creation, like they're at that event, they're partnering with that brand, like they got to do this really cool thing. I try though to just like turn my attitude sort of toward gratitude and the idea of like, everybody is like fighting their own battles and everybody's going through their own things. And just because someone has something doesn't mean that I can't also have it. Like
Right.
the idea that somebody has something doesn't mean I'm going to not get it.
Yeah,
And
that
I try
scarcity
to,
mindset. Yeah.
yeah, I usually try to see it as a signal of like, okay, that person got or has that thing that I want. Like, how can I work toward it so that we can both have it instead of being like, why them and not me?
Yeah, that seems like a good mindset shift to have because, again, going back to that whole scarcity mindset thing, especially with books, it's not like someone's only going to read from one author or pick up one book that week or that month or maybe even that day. So it's not as if you've lost that opportunity. But yeah, I think using it as motivation is probably really helpful. So
Yeah, 100%.
even within your community, then, do you guys talk about imposter syndrome there or have people shared other coping strategies that they have?
I'm not sure if I've talked about it that much, like within my community specifically. I definitely think I talk about it in therapy and with friends who aren't authors.
Mhm.
I try to just be supportive of other authors and creators. Like, I know that we're all probably dealing with this. Like, I think just by nature of like having done it for so long, I'm now kind of the mindset like we're all comparing ourselves. We're all insecure at certain times. We all have anxieties about our careers and our books and our work. The best thing we can do is support and uplift each other. Like sometimes like someone just needs a little, and a little can actually mean a lot. And so I always just try to be supportive of my fellow female writers just because I know what it's like. And I think, you know, pay it forward and just be a support system for other women who you know are going through the same thing.
Yeah. Do you think it's harder for some authors than it is for others? And if so, why is that difference there?
I mean, in general, I think publishing is like a predominantly white industry, like so many industries. And I think that like I'd be remiss to not say
Mhm.
that like white men and white women, for sure, by and large, have the easiest time in the industry. And so any complaints that we have don't hold a candle to authors of color, marginalized authors of any kind, sexual orientation, race, class, religion, etc. I try my best, and this is something that I kind of put myself to in 2018. I read this study that this woman tried to pitch a book to a bunch of agencies, and she got rejected from all of them. And then she did it under a male pseudonym, and she was like 8 times more likely. I don't remember the exact study, but like it's what's crazy is like the majority of books are written by women, but if you're a man, you're more likely to have your book published. And it's a slim majority, but it is a majority. And I just imagined to myself, if that's how hard that was for a white woman, like, can you imagine a non-binary person, a non-binary person of color, a black woman, like, etc. So I started to only read books written by women and people of color, all different minorities, groups, and marginalized communities. And I just feel like my world has opened up so much as a result. Not only do I get to champion authors who don't have the same opportunities I do, but I've learned so much. I think my empathy has grown so much. Like, I've read books about every corner of the world, like books set everywhere, books by people of all different backgrounds, books by people who are immigrants, books by people like just everything. And I feel like it just made me a better reader and a better writer. So definitely people have a harder time, and it's worth acknowledging, but also like there are things we can do. One is bring attention to it, but two is like actually support those writers because it's so,
Right.
so much harder for them. So that's something I try to do to the best of my ability. And I feel grateful that I have the privilege that I can uplift other people. So I'll try to do it as often as I can.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's something that is seen commonly on both threads is the first place that comes to mind where you do see studies like that, or maybe even just informal observations from some of those authors who are saying, are sharing their experiences, and it just becomes very, very clear that that really is the reality.
Yeah. No, and I think it's really great that people are speaking up like on threads. Like we see a lot of authors having conversations about representation, and we see publishers called out. And I think all of that is really, really important. Like we have to stand together. And I really, really do feel that it's like so deeply unfair that I want to be someone that can be uplifting other writers. Cause not only do I know how difficult it is, but like I'm a very privileged person who knows how difficult it is.
Mhm. Well, so somewhat related to that, what about outside judgment and how do you handle that? Or even what have some of those outside judgments been?
Yeah, I think like I kind of have my own boundaries set. I think a lot of authors are sort of similar with like reader reviews. I don't
Yes.
really go down those rabbit holes just because as a reader myself, I find reader reviews to be for other readers. Like the idea of a reader review, like you're not a cultural critic necessarily. Like the idea of you going on Goodreads to review a book is to tell other readers, like, hey, if you resonate with my reading taste, here's what I like and here's what I don't. Totally subjective and awesome. But the thing about reader reviews in general is that my favorite book could be my best friend's least favorite book. And that does not make the book good or bad objectively. It makes it subjectively my favorite book and her least favorite book.
Mhm.
Art is all subjective. I don't really believe in like bad art unless it's like actively doing harm because somebody is going to resonate with it. Again, as long as it's not actively doing harm. So for me, reader reviews, I tried to like with my own work distance myself from. It was a recommendation given to me by other authors who I admire. Most authors in my community who I know do the same. And then like in terms of like other feedback, I'm getting that from like obviously my team, my publisher, and then like other professional feedback they'll forward along to me so I can see as well. I don't think that that's not accepting criticism. I think that that's just a healthy boundary. Like once my art leaves me, like once a book is published and done, like I'm not accepting critique on that work anymore. Like I had so much of that. You can critique it
Yes.
for other readers, but like I, the author, am not. I find it to be quite strange when people like tag authors and their nasty
Oh,
reviews of
right.
their books. I just find it to be inappropriate. So that's kind of my boundary with that. But in terms of just like the peanut gallery of life, I heard Rachel Zegler once say this, and it really resonated with me because she finds herself in the midst of a lot of controversy and hate, and it's so unbased and awful. And she said that she's happy that people are just passionate about the things that she works on, even if they're like really mean and horrible. Like it just, they're passionate about it. Like they're passionate about Snow White. And it's like, okay, like good for you for being passionate. I can't quote her directly, but I kind of feel the same way where it's like, okay, like if you hate everything that I do and create, that's totally fine. I'm glad you're like passionate enough about the world of publishing that like you're so passionate to hate me. I don't know. I just try to do my best and be kind to myself and other people and to work hard and put my best foot forward. And like I feel just so much gratitude that this is my job and career that like I'm very much so in the mindset of like, you know what? If you're gonna hate, go for it. Like I don't even know your name.
Yeah, and this is all fairly new too, because it used to be, for the most part, especially before self-publishing, that your publicist or the publisher would be doing all the marketing for you, and you wouldn't really have these direct interactions with your readers. So, how do you think that social media has changed that landscape and even the accessibility to this feedback and judgment?
I think social media is like a huge blessing, right? Like obviously everyone has their own takes on it within the publishing world. For me, like I owe everything to social media. So I love social media. I think that like what I was saying about like tagging authors in your nasty reviews, like that's something that we see a lot of. And it's something that generally all authors, I would say, like are united against that. Like I don't know a single author that's like tag me in your bad reviews of my book.
No, I've never seen that either.
Once you really dedicate yourself to something and it's really deeply intimate and personal and you put it out in the world, it is a lot to read like a super nasty thing. So I think there's that piece of that puzzle where it gives people like full access to you in a way. But also, I think the benefits outweigh the negatives for sure. Like it helps you to find a reader base and it brings people together in community around your books. And you can also find other authors and readers. I love following authors on the internet and like
Oh,
shouting out their books and tagging them. It's like, I love to be a positive in the book world. I feel like I've connected to so many amazing authors whose books I'm like, I don't understand how this isn't like the biggest book ever. Like this book is amazing.
yeah.
And I love being able to do that online. So I would say the benefits outweigh the negatives, but there are negatives.
Yeah. So, in your opinion, why do consumers feel comfortable criticizing creators in a way that they may not criticize others in a different profession?
Oh, gosh, I mean, like it's the parasocial relationship of it all. Like, I also think the pandemic has kind of created this energy of like everybody only understands things in relation to themselves online. Like, they feel like everything is a direct call out or attack. And I feel that they lack social skills to the point of like being very cruel and mean. People sometimes say, like, oh, this is a performance review if you're a creator getting hate. And it's like, but that's just not true because if you had a 9 to 5 job, your boss would get fired if they went in front of you during like lunch hour when all of you and your coworkers were like sitting around a common space and started berating you and calling
Right.
you ugly and fat and useless and untalented. They would get fired. That's not an appropriate use of the term performance review. I understand what you're trying to get at, but constructive criticism has to come from a place of wanting the person to do better. It cannot come from a place of hating a person. If you are claiming to be constructively criticizing someone, you need to be in the same breath hoping that they'll fix, alter, remedy whatever it is you're criticizing. You have to hope the best for that person. You have to hope that they would take your insight and transition it into something really productive. It's really reductive to say this is constructive criticism. You suck, never write a book again. That's not constructive criticism. It doesn't come from
Right.
a good place. Like, that's the thing about criticism. It has to come from a good place of you wanting the person to better themselves. So I think it is disappointing because it has become really muddied. But being on the internet for 5 years, I find that I have a pretty good handle on it. Some days are harder than others, but it's okay.
Well, you also touch on the quarter life crisis. So, can you explain what this is first for people who don't know, but also why this discussion is so necessary and so necessary right now?
I think that's a great question. Everyone's heard of the midlife crisis, and it's specifically like when men go and buy cars and like they freak
Right.
out when they're in their midlife. I think the quarter life crisis is somewhat of a newer phenomenon because I think that there used to be such like a cut and dry sort of system that people went through. It was like if you were a woman, like maybe you would go to college, but maybe you wouldn't. And like you would be married by the age of like 22, 23, having kids immediately after. People had their place. And I think it's a beautiful thing that that's not our reality anymore, but it's also quite new. Like our grandparents, all of our grandparents lived in a time that they did not have the proliferation of choices, options, and journeys, paths that we do. They did not have all of the freedoms that we do. Certainly, we have a long way to go. And no one is saying that's a bad thing. It's an amazing thing. But it obviously creates a lot of anxiety, decision fatigue, loneliness, isolation that wasn't a thing when everybody was doing the same thing. And now everybody's not doing the same thing because they don't have to, which is amazing, but it creates a bit of disillusionment about adulthood. And that's kind of what I touch on in the book.
Yeah. Well, so you've had labels and names applied to you, such as being dubbed the Gen Z Carrie Bradshaw. So has that contributed to your quarter life crisis or how you view yourself, or has it maybe made it easier?
I think compliments are always great. I think that's a compliment. I think compliments are always,
Oh, that's definitely a compliment.
yeah, I think compliments are always great. I feel really honored when people like tell me that I am like a big sister to them or someone they look up to. I take that with so much responsibility. Like to me, it's a massive responsibility for someone to see me as a guiding light for them. So I think in a way the pressure has been good because I think it makes me really inclined to want to be my best self, but always like pressure like that can make you feel kind of anxious about your how you view
Yes.
yourself as well.
Or feeling like you have to live up to that label or that name on a constant basis, which just isn't realistic for most of us because we're going to have bad days or days we aren't functioning the way we would like to be functioning.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'd love to have you go into this just a little bit more about what you think would help someone who's going through a quarter life crisis, or even how they could identify that they're going through one.
I feel like identifying it is sort of just like you feel very stuck, isolated, like stuck in a routine, just like uncertain, unmoored, untethered. And I think for like the remedy, I think the book's title kind of speaks to what I pose as the remedy throughout it, which is that the hardest thing, but also the best thing you can do is reach out and ask, does anyone else feel this way? And I found that for so long, pretending like I felt fine and not anxious and not troubled and not weird about life, I think weird is a good term,
Yes.
it made it a lot worse. But
Uh,
then when I was able to be like, hey, does anyone else feel this way? It was so much easier. Like just to hear that I'm not the freak by myself crying in the back of an Uber because I don't know what I want to do with my life. Like everybody else does feel this way, or at least some people do.
right. Yeah. I agree with that. I mean, I think that's true of almost anything we're going through is as soon as we break out of that isolation and we see that we're not alone in those feelings, it gives it a sense of maybe not normalcy, but knowing that there's understanding out there and that you don't have to face it alone and try and grapple with it all by yourself.
100%.
Well, and to end this on a more lighthearted note, what is your favorite show tune?
Oh my God, what is my favorite show tune? Gosh, like when you say the word show tune, I like can't give you like my actual favorite musical theater song because it's so like prolifically sad but also beautiful. So I'm gonna give you a fun one. Probably I Got Life from Hair, specifically the 2008 cast recording by Gavin Creel. It's just a song that reminds me of like living every day to the fullest. Also, like with the knowledge that like Gavin is no longer with us, like it really touches me in such a special way. I try to listen to it like whenever I'm feeling sad or just need a little jolt. That's like my favorite cast recording of all time. So everyone listen to Hair.
Yes, what a fun note to leave it on. And also, just for people listening, if you want to know how to incorporate a song or song lyrics, do it just like that. Share what that meant to you. That's the perfect way to do it.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you again.
I appreciate it.
And thank you for listening. And be sure to check out the show notes for additional information, including all of Eli's links. And if you enjoyed today's episode, I'd appreciate if you could rate or review this podcast on Spotify or Apple. Thanks again.